Thank you. Just before we bring down the Woman of the Night, I would like to acknowledge my team that worked on this film. So we made this film on a shoestring budget. One Kickstarter campaign funded the entire thing. And so I've had many people working on the film for a year and a half. Most of them worked for free. Many of them even put their own money into the film. And we'll see if we ever get it back. And so if you worked on the film, I'd just like you to stand up quickly, just for a quick acknowledgement. And then, obviously, I'd just like to bring down the Woman of the Night, Freda Kelly. I'm sure you have many questions for her, and she's right here.
Yay, Freda! Yay, Freda! Woohoo! Freda! Woo! Good old Freda!
I'm going to start with a couple of quick questions and then over to you guys. Freda, did you bring any of George Harrison's hair with you today?
But I would like to thank everybody, definitely, and I did enjoy the film myself. Brought a tear to my eye and loads of memories. But you know what? It couldn't have happened without Ryan and his crew, and I would really like to thank them.
The opening of this film, that opening credit sequence, is really fantastic. It uses one of the Beatles' fan club Christmas records, the first of what I think you said was 7. Could you talk a little bit about how those work, because people might not be familiar with them? What were they like?
Right, the lads went into the studios at Christmas time every year and made a record specially for the fan club members of the fan club. And the only way you could get this record was join the fan club. And so they were very precious to all the members, and every year they've done that for 7 solid years, just to thank their fans. And then when the fan club was ending, because I've been asked over the years, you know, for different singles, you know, have you got 1964, have you got 1965, we decided to put it on an LP, and that was our parting gift.
I just wanted to comment that those Christmas records, those recordings are extremely rare, and so it took a lot to get permission to even be able to use it in the film, and it really is a testament to Freda that Apple Records was willing to let us use one of them, because I don't think they've ever been used in film or television before. And so when I had these conversations with them, it was basically, you know, that was the title of the film, so I had to get it, and so I was basically begging, and it really is a testament to Freda that they were willing to have these conversations with me and allow us to use it in the end.
As somebody who once had a bootleg of the Christmas recordings, I gotta say that hearing good old Freda all through the years and then meeting her is a delight beyond delights today. So can you just quickly comment on, since somebody will surely ask, could you just comment on what it was like to get, I mean, there are 4 Beatles songs in this film, it's unprecedented. Could you comment a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think on my deathbed I will look back and these will be the 4 proudest moments of my life, getting those 4 songs. It's been a year and a half of negotiations and dealing with, I mean, it's well known what it takes to get Beatles music. It's countless circles of people that you have to go through and individuals as well. And again, it's a total testament to Freda that these record labels were willing to take my calls. And when I would call them up and say, you know, I'm making this film, there's very little budget, let me pitch it to you, and I would tell them the story, and I would say, this is a woman that worked for the Beatles, has had many opportunities over the last 50 years to sell them out, never wrote a tell-all, she's still a working secretary in Liverpool, you know, works 9 to 5. And once we got the Beatles on board, because the Beatles have to approve it, and they really never do, once we got them on board, then I had to deal with all the record labels. And the fact that they were willing to take my calls and hear me out, they were really compelled by Freda's story. And so, I mean, I could make a list of probably 100 people I've dealt with on the music side of things, and I'm so thankful to each and every one of them. I was just, because you have to get a yes from every single person. So I was just waiting for the no to come through finally. through the chain. And so when I finally called Freda and I said, oh my God, I just got a call, and we got all 4 Beatles songs, she was going a little bit nuts. So.
Your name is obviously gold. This is fantastic. So I'm going to switch to this side because maybe I can see your questions a little more easily without that light in my face. So go ahead over there. Your integrity was fabulous. I'm going to translate. Your integrity was was and is fabulous.
Yes. And are you signing autographs after this?
Are you signing autographs after this?
Oh no. I'll sign it if you fill in the check.
Who's next?
Here.
Right in front.
Okay, how did you two find each other and agree to get this going?
How did they find each other and agree to get this film going?
Ryan will take it.
So my uncle is actually in the film. It's Billy Kinsley of the Mersey Beats. And so I've grown up going back and forth to Liverpool my whole life. And my uncle was in the Mersey Beats. My aunt worked for Freda in the fan club. And so their whole group of friends are sort of remnants of the 60s Liverpool music scene. So I've grown up around that scene. And Freda was one of those people. So I knew Freda from family weddings or Christmas parties or things like that, but I had no idea she was the Beatles secretary. I had no idea that she had a backstory. I just thought she was my aunt's friend who was a secretary who I enjoyed chatting with at these parties. And our producer, Kathy McCabe, who's the mastermind of this whole film, by the way, and deserves all the credit for coming together. Actually, come down. Come down. Kathy approached me 2 years ago about, and said, I've been talking to Freda about this, and approached me with the story, and I was blown away. I had no idea that there was this whole decade behind Freda. And so we started having phone calls about it. You know, she had reached this age, and she had the grandson, and she was, I won't tell your age. And I haven't told any journalist your age, for the record. If it comes out, they did the math. And so we started having conversations on the phone about it, and she would tell me stories, and I started listening. And I'm sure you gathered this from the film, but Freda's an amazing storyteller. And by the way, I get asked this a lot by journalists now, like about the truth in the film and how does she have this memory and things. And I can say without exception, everything in this film is absolutely true, because I have been shut down so many times. If you ask Freda anything that she might not know a detail to or doesn't fully remember, she just won't say a word. And so it inhibited me as a filmmaker at times because I was trying to find connectors, and Freda just won't budge. So these are her memories, and she remembers them explicitly, and she'll only talk about things that she does remember.
Thank you.
Who's next? Go ahead.
What was the Beatles' reactions to the whole Paul is dead controversy?
This man wants a comment on the Beatles' reaction to the Paul is dead controversy, perhaps starting with Paul.
That time was just madness. You know, I was getting phone calls. They were trying to convince me that he was dead, and I'd seen him, you know, like the night before. Oh, and then it got that bad that I rang Uncle Jim, you know, and said, "Can you say something about this?" And he went, "Oh." You know. So we eventually said, you know, "Come on, it's just a hoax."
And was there one right behind you? Oh, by the way, but what about that If 28 license plate and the Abbey Road cover? Explain that. Go ahead.
As a Beatles fan, what was your favorite song? And then how did you feel when they went from being like a pop band to their more mature psychedelic era?
As a Beatle fan, what's your favorite song? That's a toughie. And then as they transitioned and evolved through the years from a pop band into so much more, how did you feel about that?
This is the truth, honestly. I don't have a favourite Beatles song. You know, I'll pick Penny Lane because it reminds me of growing up, because I lived by Penny Lane. I'll take an old song and it reminds me of the cabin. There's other songs like from Magical Mystery Tour. So honest to God, I haven't got one. I just like all of them. And even the later ones. But I tend to go back to the early ones, because that was the fun time.
I just want to say too that Freda, a little detail about her that we discovered while we were filming. When she wakes up every morning, she programs her cell phone with a new Beatles song for the ringer and a different song for the text messages. And I would have included that film if we could have gotten the licensing to those ringtones as well, which we could have. But so she really is a true Beatles fan. I mean, that's what she does the first thing she wakes up in the morning.
By the way, you guys seem to have really enjoyed this film, so please do not forget to vote on your way out. Okay, I'm not telling you how to vote. You know what to do. Go ahead in the front.
Talk a little bit about the integrity of the sound. It seemed to me, and maybe it's just this lovely facility, or maybe this is the industry standard, but the integrity of the sound seemed extraordinary. I was flipped out by how good the sound is.
Did you mix the film? I'm just
especially talking about the the musical score and the music, the pieces that you chose. They're just so crisp and clean and clear. Is that just industry standard?
She's discussing she used the word integrity of the sound. I'm not really, you just pick up on it.
Yeah, well, we did get a great sound mix because of what our film was about. I think people were excited because it was so rare to be able to work with Beatles music. The mixers, we had a Wildfire Post in LA was willing to do our film for a substantially cheaper rate because we didn't have the money to pay for it. So we got a great mix. We had an amazing musician who stepped in at the last second, a composer to fill in some of those songs, and then you probably noticed, we scored the 4 Beatles tracks, and then after that, I originally had 25 Beatles songs in my film. And when I originally met with Apple, that's what I asked for. And I was hoping to come away with 1, but I said, I'm using 25. And so I had, 18 other tracks that I had to replace at some point. And because I didn't know this, I'd never made a Beatles film, but once the Beatles get on board, it's basically everything started falling in place. And so all these other record labels were willing to work with us, and that's why we were able to line up that killer soundtrack. We have a lot of original songs that the Beatles covered. The original Twist and Shout, the original Anna, the original Please Mr. Postman, the original Boys. Little Richard and Buddy Holly and Carl Perkins are all in there. And actually, ironically, that credit song, that was the 18th song, and that's by a woman named Ketty Lester. And ironically, it was the hardest song for us to get. She's by far the least famous of our 18 artists. But the reason we were after that song, and Freda really wanted me to get it, so I worked up until the very last minutes of our sound mix trying to line the licensing up. But it's actually the song that they used to play when the Beatles played the Cavern lunchtime session, and it was over and all the girls needed to go back to work. They would play that record to let the girls know it was time to file out. And so it's one of Freda's favorite songs, and I thought it was so symbolic, to be the end of our film while people are filing out, and I think it's a beautiful song. So we actually had to fight the hardest for that one, ironically. Thank you.
We're down to one more. Oh, you're out of mic. Look, you're at the mic. Go for it.
Thank you. First of all, Freda, thank you so much for sharing that story. I know as a private person, that was very difficult for you. Thank you for doing it. I actually have a question about the fan club, because obviously this took place back in the day, long before computers, and there were obviously tens of thousands of members. How did you do that? How did you manage keeping the fan club organized?
No idea. I look back and I think, how the hell did I do that? With a lot of help. And, round Liverpool, anybody that came in the office, I made them work. But it was a lot of hard work too.
Thank you.
I'm just going to add that. Yeah, you can tell how humble Freda is, but making this film has been really special because people, I didn't know the name Freda Kelly before I came out, but people from her generation, that name is legendary, especially in the US. And so in making the film, people have come out of the woodwork. We've gotten so many emails. One that comes to mind was a woman who's in her 50s now who sent us an email while we were making it and said she grew up in rural Iowa and her parents were getting divorced, and they were, it was a town where people don't get divorced, and she was so ashamed. And Freda, she wrote to the fan club, and Freda responded with a letter that said something like, we're thinking about you, and Paul says it's all going to be okay. And this woman wrote this letter to us saying, Freda Kelly changed my life. She changed my childhood by writing that letter. And so she's so humble, but she did this to thousands and thousands of people. And that's my favorite part about the film, actually, because I don't think that's ever happened again. I think this is the only time in history that fans got that type of personal attention. And I don't think Justin Bieber's fan club secretary is sending out his hair right now. And I don't think and I don't think it will ever happen again. And so it's been really rewarding, I think, to see all these people respond to what Freda did for their lives when they were teenage girls, for the most part.
Is there a Freda Kelly fan club?
There is now.
Thank you to producer Kathy McCabe. Thank you to director Ryan White, and to the one and only Ol Freda Kelly. Thank you for coming to Austin.
Woo! Yay! Maybe if you stand on one of those chairs. You stand on one of those chairs?
Well, you wouldn't be able to see what it is. You need to be up there.
Yeah.
That's all. I got a lot anyway.
Yeah. Great film, huh? Your dad looked great. That's Sandra Kinsley, or Emma Kinsley, Billy Kinsley's daughter.
Fabulous film. So also anything? Wonderful. Thank you so much for making the movie. Can I do a quick Get up, Doc. Let's take a picture.
Let's go.